Okay, hello. I can't believe, I don't know, I just feel so excited to be back. I'm really happy to be here. I feel like it's been so long since I have done an Instagram Live, and I'm really excited to talk to you all today about how to work with herbs and practices for this Mercury retrograde. Mercury retrograde started today. I don't know if you all have been getting any little signs or hints that we are in full effective Mercury retrograde, but I definitely have. Lots of interesting dreams, lots of past communications coming through. But yeah, so I'm happy to be back, and let's go ahead and jump in because I have a lot to share with you today about Mercury retrograde. So, first, looking at the planet of Mercury and what it represents. Mercury has to do with the mind, the nervous system, communication, thinking, processing. It also has to do with travel. And it's really very much connected to the way we process information from the world around us, from external stimuli, but also from things that come from within. So, Mercury has this really big connection to, of course, our mind, the way we think, the way we talk. Now, Mercury is in retrograde in the sign of Libra, which is my rising sign, happens to be my rising sign. But Libra is all about balance, justice. It has a lot to do with relationships, the other, so all kinds of relationships, partnerships, business partnerships, romantic relationships, friendships, all kinds of relationships kind of fall under the category of Libra because this is how we are relating to what's outside of us and kind of what's opposite of us. So you'll see me looking down a little bit because I have lots of notes because I don't want to forget anything that I have to share with you. Mercury also has to do with how we analyze and how we examine and make sense of the things that we are experiencing. So when we think about Mercury in Libra, think about how you are making sense of your relationships, how you are making sense of things that are going to bring you into balance and harmony, because balance is also very much connected to Libra. And when we're talking about Mercury retrograde, so we're going to be looking back at ways of communicating, things that have been communicated from the past and past relationships. We're getting this opportunity to start to understand things that maybe were previously hard to process, or maybe things that were unprocessed from the past in how we communicated in relationships or how things were communicated to us. We are getting this opportunity to revisit these things and start to make sense of them, and not only make sense of them, but understand where maybe we had been blocked in the past and how we can start to remove those blocks. And that's one of the great things about Mercury retrograde is that we get to see things from a different perspective. We get to see ourselves from a different perspective, and we get to see, because of this Libra energy, our connections with other people and our relationships and the ways that we were communicating, or the ways that things were communicated to us. We get to see all of that from a different perspective. And if there are things that were painful or difficult or unprocessed, we now have this wonderful opportunity to start to heal those things. So that's one of the really great things about this Mercury retrograde, is that we do have this really beautiful opportunity to kind of shift and understand and process past relationship communications. That's going to be one of the big things I think is going to come up. And I feel like right now, what more do we need than to be able to understand each other and to be able to communicate with each other in a way that is healthy, in a way that is effective, and in a way that is compassionate, because the ruler of Libra is Venus. And Venus has everything to do with love, values, beauty, relationships, and I also connect Venus a lot with compassionate communication, being able to show up in a very loving way. So we get to revisit these things through this kind of energy of this Venus energy of love and connection and compassion. So that's a really beautiful thing. The sign of Libra is also very much connected to our kidneys and our kidneys are connected to the emotion of fear. So when we're talking about Mercury retrograde in Libra, we have an opportunity to review things that can be considered fears that we've had from the past, fears around communication especially. So if there's anything that we've had around like being able to communicate with others in a way that doesn't kind of bring up all of the trauma from the past, we're getting this opportunity to see how fears around communication show up and how we're talking to people now. So perfect example of this is I had a dream last night about communication with a parent and how I learned to communicate with a parent and how that communication style was still showing up for me in some ways. And so again, lots of opportunities to review how we are communicating and how communication could be based in fear. And this is really great because again, we have this really deep connection between the kidneys and fear and then Mercury and the nervous system. So again, because Mercury has this deep connection to the mind and to the nervous system, we already know that fear has a huge impact on the way that we think and the way that we feel, the way that we experience life, because fear is going to impact everything from our ways of communicating. If we are able to communicate, I mean, I can tell you, I've experienced so many times where I just didn't say anything because I was scared. And so we have this opportunity now to look back at that and say, where is that fear coming from? And what can I do to start to move it and heal it and come to peace with it? Especially because of that Venusian energy, we have this really beautiful opportunity to heal fear with love, because Venus is all about love. So that's really powerful, because also Libra is connected to our hormones and our hormonal balance. So when we think about fear and the kidneys, that has a huge impact on our hormonal balance. Huge impact. Huge, huge, huge. Fear can do wild things to our hormones. So the more that we can come into balance and the more that we can come out of fear-based actions, fear-based communication, the more that we can start to balance our nervous system and our hormones. So this Mercury retrograde is giving us a really wonderful opportunity for that. And this can come through in so many ways. Like I mentioned, the dream that I had. So Mercury retrograde is a really great time for dream work. So you can go and, make sure you're writing down your dreams. This is a good time to also review old dream journals. And maybe if there were dreams that you know are significant, but you couldn't quite understand them, this is an amazing time to go back and read them, review them, and start to make sense of them. Because with Mercury in retrograde, we get an opportunity to revisit and kind of make sense of things from the past that were difficult to make sense of back then. So go back and review old journals, review old dream journals, review old things that you had a difficult time making sense of. And also with Mercury in retrograde, we have an opportunity to get clarity through dreams. It's also a really great time to get clarity from ancestors and working with ancestral guides. This is one of my favorite practices for Mercury retrograde, because ancestors can help us to understand what we're not able to process during the day, especially those things that are connected to family lineages and bloodlines. And so especially when we're talking about fear, a lot of the fears that we have or experience come from our ancestral lineages and things that our ancestors experienced or things that our parents experienced, that we learned our behaviors and how to move through the world based on those things. So now with Mercury in retrograde, we have this opportunity to say, hey, those helpful ancestors that are guiding me and supporting me in my journey and my spiritual growth and my just growth and evolution on this planet, what are the things that I can look at from my past, from my family, from my upbringing, from my ancestry? What are the fears that I can now remedy and release? What are the fears that could be impacting how I show up in relationships, how I communicate, also how I receive money, because Venus is connected to money and values. So all of those things we have this opportunity to revisit and gain a better understanding of, and also to heal. So a really great time for dream work, for ancestor work, and again, just going back and making sense of things that did not make sense before. Okay, so let me see. The other thing that I wanted to mention is that there are so many herbal remedies that you can work with for this Mercury retrograde. And when we're talking about Mercury, planet of Mercury, this has a lot to do with, of course, the mind, the nervous system. So we're going to be focusing on herbs for the mind and nervous system. And also with the air sign of Libra, we can focus on things that have to do with air energy. Air is, of course, again, connected to the mind, but it's also connected to the voice. It's connected to our songs, our stories. And so this is a really great opportunity to work with practices like an herbal facial steam. And so this is like obviously very focused on your head. So you get to have these herbs that help to open you up. And when you do this herbal facial steam, I'll tell you some of the herbs that you can work with, but when you're doing an herbal facial steam, especially in this Mercury retrograde, it's a really great time to ask those herbs, ask your ancestors, ask any of just asking your own self, your own body, what stories can I understand and release around fear? How can I invite more love? How can I find more stability in my ways of communicating? Also, anything connected to those Venusian things like money, relationships, and values. Looking at the ways that maybe some of those things that we could go for in life, whether it's the relationships that we pursue or the communications that we pursue, any of those things any of those approaches that we've had to those things that were based in fear, we have this opportunity to ask for clarity. How can I release this fear? How can I let this go? How can I process this in a new way? How can I process this in a way that now I'm able to transform this fear into love, into strength, into my own empowerment? So those are the kinds of things that you can kind of ask for as you're doing this facial steam. Asking for clarity, just asking for clarity is really helpful. And I can't tell you how helpful it is to just do this practice, because I have recently been asking for clarity on just a pattern that I know is based in fear that has been coming up for me. And I can't even tell you how wonderful it is to just have a dream that gives you so much insight, wake up in the morning and then stumble upon this meditation that gives me so much more insight about that fear and how to release it. So just asking is so powerful. You'll get the information that you need. You have everything within you to receive that information and receive that guidance. So when you do your facial steam, ask for that guidance for whatever it is that you want, and it'll come in. It may not come in all at once when you're doing the facial steam, but that practice, that ritual practice of doing that steam can be really helpful. So some of the other practices that you can do around Mercury retrograde, one of the things that I love is to incorporate incense, because again, it's air energy, and air, of course, is connected to the mind and to the voice. So incense and herbal facial steams are really, really great to do around this time. Also, anything like massaging or tapping for your head, just for the back of your neck. I did a practice this morning called Himalayan Kriya Yoga with a teacher I really, really love on Insight Timer named Iwalina, and I'll leave her information in the description for this recording afterwards. But it was so helpful for me being able to release, doing the tapping, doing the breath work, and also having the incense around to help facilitate that ritual cleansing and clearing experience. So incense and facial steams, really wonderful around Mercury retrograde. So some of the herbs that you can work with, rosemary is one. Rosemary is amazing. It is an herb that helps to support the mind. It's an herb of remembrance. So when we're talking about Mercury retrograde, we're talking about remembering all those RE words: revise, review, remember. So rosemary is one of those herbs that helps with remembrance and remembering those things from our past that maybe we want to release, that maybe we want to heal. And thank you so much for all the hearts. I'm really loving those. So that is something that you can connect with, rosemary. This rosemary is an amazing herb to add to a facial steam. You can also add lavender. Lavender is supportive to the nervous system. Mercury has a connection and rules over the nervous system, so lavender can help you in supporting your nervous system. As you have probably experienced, lavender is pretty amazing, really helps to calm us down. And so rosemary and lavender as a facial steam is an amazing combination. You could also add something like mint to that. Mint is something that helps to kind of stimulate the mind and also bring clarity. What I love about mint is that you're also having this herb that helps with digesting. So mint is known to be a carminative, and basically that means that it helps to support digestion and soothe digestion. And when we're talking about digestion, physical digestion, of course you're going to get those properties if you're drinking mint tea. So maybe you have some mint and lavender tea and do a facial steam. But mint can also help in the processing of emotions. Anything that supports physical digestion can also help with digesting unprocessed emotions that are living in the body. So that's something that you can work with as well, and mint is pretty gentle for most people to use. So some of the other herbs are going to be more focused on the mind specifically. So one of the herbs that I love, and you probably heard me talk about a lot, is Bacopa. Bacopa is one of my favorite brain herbs, one of my favorite Mercury herbs, one of my favorite like Gemini and Libra herbs. It is a wonderful herb for supporting the mind. It helps to support the nervous system. It also can help with hormonal balance. Now, of course, with all of these herbs, you want to make sure that they're going to be right for you. So you want to make sure that you're doing your own research and making sure that if you have, especially if you have any imbalances, if you're taking any herbs, or if you're taking any medications, do your own research before consuming any herbs. Bacopa is something that you can work with in tincture form or in tea form. I will, like for example, if you were to make that cup of mint and lavender tea, you could put 30 drops of Bacopa tincture into that to really help support your digestion, your nervous system, and your mind. The other one is Gotu Kola, and Gotu Kola and Bacopa are both Brahmi herbs, which means that they are connected to the mind and really helping the mind, support the mind and the brain and brain health. So these herbs I find are also really powerful for dream work and for processing information. If I am ever unclear about something and I'm having difficulty understanding something that I'm going through or something from the past and I want to make sense of it, I'm trying to like get my head around it. These are typically the herbs that I work with, the Brahmi herbs. So that's Bacopa and Gotu Kola. And of course they have that physical impact on the body where they're supporting the mind and the brain, but they also have a energetic and spiritual impact in helping to bring clarity to things that we're having trouble processing. So very much connected to Libra, the Mercury retrograde in Libra, being able to process things and review things and gain a better understanding. So those are really great to work with. And then I also have here cordyceps, and cordyceps is a mushroom. Cordyceps is something that is really supportive to the brain, and again, those brain herbs are going to be really supportive during Mercury retrograde and being able to process, because one thing I also want to mention is that it's really helpful to slow down during Mercury retrograde because we do receive so much information. And now not only are we receiving information, but we're also pulling up things from the past to be reviewed and understood. So it really helps to have that support energetically and physically with brain herbs. And then finally, copal. And I know copal is not accessible and available to everyone. It is something that comes from a lot of times outside of the country, out of the state, but tree resins in general can be helpful and burned as incense. So I like to, because when I'm in Mexico, I usually pick up copal and things like that. So that's just something that I work with, but I like to blend copal and rosemary as an incense for the Mercury Retrograde. And this is a really great combination for clearing the mind. Copal is helpful because it helps us to have mental clarity. It also helps to clear repetitive thoughts, or at least bring understanding also to repetitive thoughts. Because when we're in Mercury Retrograde, if you're having repetitive thoughts, that's actually kind of a good thing, because it's pointing you towards something that is wanting to be reviewed and revised or kind of looked at again. So those repetitive thoughts can be guides in a way, but when we're working with something like copal and incense, that helps to just bring a little bit of spaciousness to it. That way you can start to process that information and not just have it looping. So incense can be really helpful for that, and of course the facial steams. Okay, so I know I covered a lot of information in this. Hopefully this is helpful for you all, because Mercury retrograde is a really powerful time. I think, aside from all the other things that could go wrong with a Mercury retrograde, like missing mail and, back up your computer, do all those normal things, but of course there's deeper aspects to it, and there's a lot more that can be explored, especially when you are working with practices and herbs that help you to dive into understanding fears, fear-based communication, and kind of being able to release those things and being able to heal them on a really deep level, on an ancestral level, because it's also a really great time for working with your ancestral guides and kind of being able to get deep into our minds and being able to process and heal and release old stories and kind of be able to communicate in ways that are healthy and full of love. So I will of course post this afterwards, and I will also be sharing my the teacher that I found on Insight Timer, who I absolutely am just like, I so love all the work that she's doing. It's amazing to be able to have access to really powerful practices like Himalayan Kriya Yoga, breathwork. There's lots of great resources there for you. So I'll list my favorites. And also I wanted to let you know that I have some really amazing things coming up soon. I am working on a blog post right now on the dark moon and creating dark moon rituals. The dark moon is such a powerful time in our menstrual cycles and in our lives. So because we're going to be entering into the dark moon phase seasonally, like looking at the wheel of the year, we're entering into the dark moon phase coming up in the next couple weeks. And so I'm putting together this blog post for you on how to work with that energy. So make sure you sign up to my newsletter so you can get that. And then also I'm going to be having an apothecary sale. And I don't know if you noticed, but I do have a new website. Go ahead and check it out. And I haven't put all of my shop on the new website, but that's going to be getting updated this week. And I'm going to be having an apothecary fall harvest sale. So make sure you are on my newsletter for that, so you can get the discount code and all the good info on the apothecary sale. And then I'm going to be having an offering for this ancestral season that we're stepping into. And so we're going to be doing a couple group circles. We're going to be looking at ancestral reverence and ritual, ancestral dream work, and really diving into a actual practice of ancestral dream work together, where we're going to meet a few times, do some dreaming, work with some of the herbal remedies that I have for you. I made this amazing NYX dream oil that is so powerful for ancestral dream work. So definitely sign up for my newsletter if you want to find out about all those wonderful things that are coming. And thank you so much for being here, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. I'll be back next week on Monday, and I'm going to be talking a little bit more about the dark moon and how to work with it. And yeah, it's kind of awesome that I came back on the Mercury retrograde. So I'm happy to be here, so happy to see you all, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.